Shalom Eastern Shore. I am Rabbi David Tokajer with Congregation Maim Chaim, the Eastern Shore's Messianic Synagogue, and I am bringing you your daily dose of living water. I love the book of Acts. There's just something so encouraging today in reading about the lives and struggles of the emissaries in the early days of the body of Messiah. Seeing how much adversity they faced, how fearlessly they preached the Besorah, the good news of Messiah Yeshua, and how much ground they relentlessly covered in order to reach Jew and Gentile alike as far as the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, would carry them. Think of the thousands upon thousands of lives that were touched by the signs and wonders and the message of salvation and hope in Messiah Yeshua because of the tireless efforts of guys like Peter, Stephen, Paul, and many others. Yet, out of all of the book of Acts, my absolute favorite story to read is a random and obscure passage out of Acts chapter 14. Paul and Barnabas are in Lystra, and they come across a man who is unable to use his legs and feet and hasn't been able to since birth. The man is not only yearning and desperate for healing, but when he sees Paul, I wholeheartedly think he is able to see the presence of God in him and has faith that he can be healed. So Paul tells the man to get up and walk, and the man immediately does so and experiences complete and perfect healing. The people of Lystra are pagans, and in particular, there's a huge temple for Zeus there. When they hear of this miracle, they believe that the gods have come in human form in the persons of Paul and Barnabas and begin to worship them and even attempt to make sacrifices to them. Of course, Paul attempts to correct them and begins to preach the good news to them, but they are unable to stop the crowd. And this is where we find ourselves with Acts chapter 14, verses 19 and 20. But Jewish people came from Antioch and Iconium, and after they won the crowd over and stoned Paul, they were dragging him out of the city, supposing him to be dead. But while the disciples surrounded him, he got up and went back into the city. But Paul was not only not dead, he wasn't finished with Lystra yet. Paul is beaten and bruised. He potentially is concussed and perhaps even has some lacerations and fractures. But nonetheless, Paul comes to, jumps to his feet, and immediately runs back into the very city that just attempted to kill him and begins to fearlessly preach again. I can't even begin to imagine suffering in such a way for the good news of Yeshua. The thought of being stoned to the brink of death for the sake of the name of Yeshua, yet getting right back up and running into the violent masses again to reach even just one more person is mind-blowing to me. Yet, this is the very calling we have in Messiah, to make disciples of all nations, even at the cost of our own lives. Let's be honest, the whole world around us today is pretty adverse to the message of Yeshua. The Bible tells us that things will get way worse before Messiah returns, and that for many of us, our very lives will be at stake for the gospel. I yearn to have the chutzpah like Paul in Acts 14, to live out the command given to Joshua to be bold and fearless for the name of Yeshua. This is something the body of Messiah needs to dedicate our lives in prayer for. The power of the Ruach, of the Spirit of God, to stand up, dust ourselves off, and get right back to work for the good news of Messiah. How about you? Is the name of Yeshua worth risking your life? Shalom.